I found my wife cheating on me with a neighbor and she ended up sleeping in the car. When you get married, you do it with the belief that love is forever, that both of you will be together for the rest of your life, in which love, understanding, trust and mutual support are the main columns on which your marriage will be supported. A marital union between a man and a woman, who swore love to each other at the altar before the presence of God. In my particular case, things did not turn out as I expected, because accepting that my wife was cheating on me with the neighbor from the apartment upstairs was a hard blow for me, which destroyed our marriage, changed my life, but also life of 3 beautiful children. My wife and I have been married for about 14 years, of which we have 3 beautiful children. The youngest is 5 years old, the middle one is 9 years old, the oldest girl is 12 years old. As a way of taking care of the children, since we both work, my wife works during the day in a company where she sells health insurance, and I work the second shift, from 4 in the afternoon until 12 at night, as an industrial mechanic. My wife and I had a kind of schedule, although it reduced the interactions between my wife and I. It was a perfect work schedule because I took care of the children during the day and my wife took care of him at night while I was at work, so that way the children were under the care of their parents 24/7. My wife and I used to make love an hour or 2 before she left for work and took the kids to school. She usually went to work at 9 a.m. and left work at 4 p.m. How did I find out that my wife was cheating on me with the neighbor in the upstairs apartment, and why did she end up sleeping in the car? It is the story that I will tell at this time. Therefore, if you are one of the people who likes the story of a broken marriage as a result of infidelity, lies, loss of trust, emotional manipulation and irrational jealousy, this story could be for you. It all started when my 11-year-old daughter called me at work around 8 o'clock at night telling me that she did not know where her mother was, because she had gone to visit a friend in the apartment below to talk about school, which would not take more than 10 or 15 minutes. An hour passed, and since her mother had not returned, my daughter went to the downstairs apartment to ask about her mother, in which the downstairs neighbor replied that she had not seen to her mother throughout the day, answer which worried my daughter more, because she did not know where her mother was, reasons why she called me at work, to ask me if I knew where her mother was. As a result of my daughter's concern, I left work and began a search for my wife throughout the neighborhood of a group apartment building. At around 9 o'clock at night, trying to comfort the children, suddenly my wife opened the door of the apartment, which brought a lot of happiness to the girl and the tranquility of whoever is telling this story. Faced with this behavior of my wife, which was not usual for her, I asked her why she had disappeared for several hours. In which my wife told me that she went out for a walk down the street to clear her mind, without the company of the children. After the children went to bed, with a bit of concern, I asked her, what was the reason for lying to your eldest daughter, telling her that you would be in the apartment of the neighbor downstairs? My wife looked at me with a smile saying, you know how children are. They always want to be where one of the parents is, and at that moment she wanted to be alone. Answers from my wife which created some suspicion about this behavior of hers, a mother who is separated from her children for nothing. But, the least I was thinking at the time was, that my wife was cheating on me with another man. Although I must admit that the idea crossed my mind, but I quickly put it out of my mind, so as not to lose the trust that until that moment as a man I had for my wife. Many street sociologists say that men tend to know their car better than their wives, and I believe this is a truth that many men share. For many men, the proper functioning of the car is the first priority, followed by the children, and finally, in that order, the wife arrives. Anyone who is listening to this story will wonder what caring for a car, something so superficial and material, has to do with caring for a wife. Some scholars of street psychology say that if she spends the time with your wife that you spend in the car, your wife doesn't have time to cheat on you with another man. But, the other similarity is that many times you know when something is not working well in your car. In the same way you also realize that something is not working well with your wife. As a result of what happened the other night with my wife, who disappeared for several hours, without the children knowing where she was going, that made me suspicious that something was not right with my wife, and even more so when we are talking about a marriage of 14 years. This suspicion, product of my wife's abnormal behavior, created a series of fears, but also answers to questions that were controlling my mind. What really happened to my wife that night? What were the real reasons that my wife for several hours did not communicate with the children? Does my wife have any family problems that I don't know about? Is there some kind of problem between my wife and I that I don't know anything about? These are unanswered questions that are in the back of my mind. Just as you notice when your car doesn't work like the day before, which leads to concern. The same when your wife experiences certain changes in her behavior that she didn't have days ago is something that causes concern. My wife, before when we made love, it was noticeable according to the behavior of her body and the sounds of a woman who was being pleased in bed. On the contrary, in the last days I noticed that she was absent, as if she wanted me to finish as quickly as possible to satisfy my intimate needs of man. Like when someone is doing the thing just to do it, behavior in bed, which increased my concern as a man. As a man, sometimes you have the feeling that this woman is not in you at that moment. My wife gave me the impression that at that moment, I was not her man and she was not my wife, which produced in me an unpleasant feeling of failure as a man. Although I had been married 14 years with 3 children, during the weeks we made love 2 or 3 times. A month after the incident, we made love maybe once a week only on weekends, which increased the sensation in me. That sexually my wife was not available, which I believe in the suspicion that she stopped liking me as a man. She was losing the desire to have sex, or that my wife had the possibility that she was cheating on me with other men. Another thing with my wife is that many times, when she was in front of me, she looked like a distracted woman, in which many times she did not pay attention to me. One of the changes that caught my attention was the phone calls with her friends who, when I was present, always answered with the same expression, "I'll call you much later because I'm busy right now." Faced with the changes presented by my wife in private and distracted by her obligations as a mother, I often asked her what the reasons were for that change in recent weeks, to which she replied that everything is due to stress of work and the problems that she is going through, in which she did not feel fulfilled as a woman always doing the same job. Reasons why her doctor told her to look for a chiropractor, to reduce the tension in her neck due to muscular tension. As a way to improve her muscle tension and neck pain, 1 day a week she visited a chiropractor's office recommended by her doctor. For some reason everything seemed so strange, so I investigated through my wife's insurance server, and I got the number and address of the chiropractor my wife was attending, because I didn't have the need to know what was really going on with her and try to help her with her muscle tension problem. Looking at the name of the chiropractor also towards an image of him, which caught my attention because of that individual. I had seen him several times sitting in the waiting room of the building's apartment, which increased my suspicion about my wife and the type of relationship that she really had and he had with my wife. For some reason the images of the previous month, in which she disappeared for several hours, made me think that my wife was not walking to clear her mind, as that did told me. It all making sense now. My wife wasn't walking down the street. My wife spent those 3 worrying for my kids. As much as I don't want to accept it, my wife was cheating on me with the upstairs neighbor, the same man, who my wife is talking in the chiropractor's office. In a nutshell, my wife is cheating on me with the chiropractor. Don't have the slightest doubt, when the images of my wife making love with another man crossed my mind, it was not a pleasant feeling. It was a feeling of disappointment, disgust, anger and disappointment that broke my heart, in which that image of mother and wife that I had in my mind broke up forever. I am not going to deny you in what I am telling you. During that moment, one of the most difficult for me as a man, as a husband and as a father, I would have liked to have had my wife in front of me, to accuse her or blame her for everything that as man I feel, full of jealousy and deception by an unfaithful woman, a man who ends up doing the worst things in the same circumstances. But I had to think about the life of 3 children, who depended on the love and support of their father. Children who were not responsible for the acts of a mother who only thought of herself. In that very difficult moment for me as a man, denying that reality was my first response to stop the grief. Rationalize or try to justify my wife's infidelity was the second thing that came to my mind. And finally, for the well-being of the children, continue with my wife as if nothing had happened was the third idea. that dominated my thoughts. Product of that loss of mental sanity for a moment in which the indecision, or hesitation in what I should do and the emotional dilemma that I was going through, I made the decision to take the bull by the horn with what is popularly said to accept that my wife was cheating on me with the neighbor of the upstairs apartment. Confronting a woman who cheats is the first response, and we all know the results where denial, lies, accusations, emotional manipulation, and in the most extreme cases verbal abuse, heated fights, where both lose respect for each other, is the result, which not alleviates the situation, and aggravates many more when there are children involved. Instead of confronting my wife about cheating on me with other men, for several months I played along, like everything was fine until I had the opportunity to see for myself what my mind and heart already knew. During that time that my wife was cheating on me, as a way to have an idea of what would be the course to follow, when you know that your wife is being unfaithful to you in which there are children involved, I must be careful in what I do, and more in a society where the custody of children, judges automatically award it to the mother. It is a reality that as men we must accept when we speak of family court, no matter how unfair it may seem to us. My lawyer recommended that in order to have a better legal argument I should present proof of my wife's alleged infidelity. They recommended a private detective, who would be in charge of following the case and collecting the evidence. Knowing my wife's movements, knowing the most frequent days and times she went out with her lover, the private investigator had an idea of the best time to collect that evidence, and catch my wife at that precise moment when she was cheating on me with another man. It is an expression of surprise, shame and disappointment in the eyes of my wife which is worth millions of dollars to me, a woman who could not deny that she was being unfaithful to her husband with the neighbor upstairs, because she could not control that need to satisfy her sexual needs with someone other than her husband. But, for the well-being of my children, damaging the reputation of their mother is not part of my revenge as a cheating husband. Nor does it exist in me, that need to seek family therapy to cure or change a woman who stopped loving me as a man. They usually went out on Thursdays or Fridays between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. The children were usually taken care of by the downstairs neighbor during those hours in which I was working. One Friday at about 6 p.m. the private investigator called me to say that both the chiropractor and my wife were entering a small motel several miles from downtown, driving my wife's car. He told me that I wanted to confront my wife and her lover while she was in the hotel room. This was the time to do it. For some reason, to avoid unnecessary confrontations with my wife and her lover, the evidence he was gathering was enough for me. Around 9 o'clock at night, he sent me via email several photographic images where my wife was embracing and kissing her lover, the upstairs neighbor with whom my wife was cheating on me. That night I arrived at work the same as always, as if nothing had happened, but with a broken heart. My soul was destroyed, because there was no longer the slightest doubt that my wife was being unfaithful to me. A week later, Friday came again. I asked my oldest daughter to call me when her mother left. In itself, my wife went out to meet her mind to make love in the apartment upstairs or in a cheap motel, which gave me time to change the keys to the entrances of the apartment, prepare the children so they could spend the weekend with their grandmother, while I slept in a hotel room near the house. I left a note on the door from our apartment telling her where the children were and the reasons why the apartment door's lock were changed. Telling my wife that she had 3 options. She slept in the lover's apartment upstairs. She could spend tonight and the weekend in the same motel where she made love with her lover, or she could spend the night sleeping in her car in the building parking lot. The following week, my wife implored me, and begged me not to divorce her for the emotional health of the children, so that they do not grow up without the protection of a loving family. That the children are not responsible for the problems and parental problems, mostly a mother who, because she was selfish with herself, did not learn to value her husband, much less the children. My wife claimed that she felt tired, bored, unmotivated, left out, ignored, without hope of change in a marriage of 14 years, meeting the demands of 3 children, living in the same apartment, doing the same job, and a husband who paid more attention to his car than to his wife, which made her feel that she was not needed as a woman. That we were both responsible for the breakdown of the marriage and that she deserved that I give her a second chance as a woman, and a wife to make up for her mistakes when she had an affair with another man. I have the belief that I am not a perfect person, I am a man full of mistakes, but the worst thing that my wife made as a person was losing confidence in me as a husband and my ability to solve, or find solutions to the problems of the couple. Not making the slightest effort to establish some type of communication with me, where she could express what she felt and as a family seek solutions to the problems that all marriages go through. But instead of doing that, she cheated on me with another man. Something that I as a man do not forgive. 3 months after this incident, which destroyed a marriage of 14 years, my wife and I reached an amicable separation agreement, where we would have joint custody, and since the divorce was the product of the wife's infidelity, she is not entitled to receive any kind financial support as a wife. In short, as a father I was only obliged to pay for the support of the children and pay for their education. What happened to the relationship between my ex-wife and the chiropractor upstairs, the neighbor with whom she was cheating on me? Weeks later, as a result of a scandal that damaged his reputation, they tell me that he moved to another city and closed the office at the health center. My ex-wife, she lives with the children in a small apartment that I pay for, living as a single mother, who lost her way and did not know how to appreciate everything she had until it was too late. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like this type of story of cheating, lies and broken marriages, please subscribe to this channel, leave your comments and share this type of video.